Who were the real barbarians of ancient Europe? Shattering myths and revealing the truth behind Rome's fiercest rivals. Barbarians or brave nations? When we hear the word barbarian, images of wild-haired warriors, guttural screams and blood-stained battlefields often come to mind. Roman writers painted their enemies as uncivilized, savage and crude, the antithesis of Roman order and refinement. But what if that story is only one side of history? In truth, the so-called barbarians of ancient Europe were complex societies, with rich cultures, intricate laws, and powerful armies. From the towering Germanic tribes to the fierce Celts, and from the horse-riding Huns to the defiant Dacians, these peoples challenged empires, shaped the map of Europe, and left behind legacies far more impressive and nuanced than Roman propaganda would have you believe. So who were the real barbarians? Let's unravel this tale. What did barbarian really mean? The term barbarian originated with the Greeks, who used the word barbaros to describe anyone who didn't speak Greek, essentially those whose language sounded like gibberish, bar. The Romans borrowed the term and used it to label all non-Romans, especially those living beyond the empire's northern and eastern frontiers. But it wasn't just a neutral label. Over time, barbarian became synonymous with savagery, backwardness, and danger. This was more about political ideology and control than truth. It created a clear distinction. We are civilized, they are not. The reality? Many so-called barbarians had sophisticated societies, deep religious traditions, and fierce codes of honor. But Rome needed enemies, and so they invented the myth of the brute. The Celts, warriors of iron and spirit. The Celts were among the earliest groups to be labeled barbarians by the Greeks and Romans. Spread across modern-day France, Gaul, Britain, Ireland, Spain, and parts of Central Europe, the Celts were known for their art, fierce independence, and warrior culture. They had no central government, but were instead ruled by local kings, druids, priests, and warrior elites. Their artwork, swirling designs, intricate metalwork, and decorative weaponry was stunningly complex. Celts were formidable warriors. When they sacked Rome in 390 BCE under Brennus, it sent shockwaves through the Republic. "Vae victis!" Woe to the vanquished, he reportedly cried as he demanded Rome's ransom in gold. Despite their label as savages, the Celts had philosophers, astronomers, and a spiritual code centered on nature and the cycles of life. The Germanic tribes, builders, migrators, and empire makers. The Germanic tribes were the greatest challenge to the Roman Empire's northern border. These included the Goths, Vandals, Saxons, Franks, Lombards, and Suebi, among others. They lived across what is now Germany, Scandinavia, the Netherlands, and Central Europe. Far from being a chaotic mass, they had tribal laws, chieftains, and emerging monarchies. Their societies were agricultural, not nomadic. They built villages, practiced farming, and had oral legal traditions passed down through generations. The Gothic king Alaric. I famously sacked Rome in 410 CE, not as a mindless invader, but as a former Roman military officer denied fair treatment by the empire. Ironically, many of these barbarians would become kings and emperors of post-Roman Europe. The Franks founded France, the Visigoths ruled Spain, and the Ostrogoths took over Italy. The Huns, fearsome riders or misunderstood nomads. The Huns, under the legendary Attila, inspired some of the most terrifying accounts in Roman history. Arriving from the Central Asian steppes, they were horse archers, known for their speed, brutality, and scorched earth tactics. But were they truly monstrous? The Huns had diplomatic relations, married into royal families, and demanded tribute, not destruction. Attila himself negotiated with Roman emperors, was baptized by some accounts, and led an army composed of various tribes and ethnic groups, not just Huns. To the Romans, the Huns were everything they feared: foreign, fast, unpredictable. But they were also pragmatic strategists, not mindless brutes. The Dacians and Thracians, masters of mountains and gold. In modern-day Romania and Bulgaria, the Dacians and Thracians carved out mountain kingdoms that resisted Roman conquest for centuries. The Dacians were known for their gold mines, advanced fortresses, and fierce warriors. Emperor Trajan launched 2 bloody wars against them, ultimately conquering Dacia in 106 CE. The triumph is immortalized on Trajan's column in Rome, showing Dacians fighting valiantly in organized ranks. The Thracians, meanwhile, were famed for their horsemanship and music. One of the most famous gladiators of all time, Spartacus, was a Thracian. The real savage acts, Rome's brutality exposed. Ironically, some of the most barbaric acts of ancient times came not from the barbarians, but from Rome itself. Rome crucified thousands of captured slaves and rebels, including 6,000 after Spartacus's revolt. Gladiators were forced to fight to the death for entertainment. Entire cities were razed to the ground, such as Carthage in 146 BCE and Jerusalem in 70 CE. The empire enslaved millions and used public torture and execution as tools of fear. This isn't to glorify the enemies of Rome, but to highlight that the so-called civilized often acted with greater cruelty than their foes. The legacy of the barbarians. The fall of the Roman Empire in the West did not bring chaos and darkness. It ushered in the rise of new kingdoms, many founded by the so-called barbarian tribes. The Visigoths and Ostrogoths became custodians of Roman law and tradition. The Anglo-Saxons laid the foundation for what would become England. The Franks, under Charlemagne, would eventually unite much of Western Europe and spark the Carolingian Renaissance. These people didn't destroy civilization, they transformed it. Rethinking the word barbarian. History is written by the victors, and often it is shaped by fear. The Romans needed enemies, and the word barbarian became a convenient tool for propaganda. But the truth is richer, more complex, and far more fascinating. The so-called barbarians of Europe were builders, artists, lawmakers, philosophers, warriors, and kings. Their societies were different, but not inferior. In fact, much of modern Europe is built on their legacy. So the next time you hear the word barbarian, ask yourself, was it really about savagery? Or was it about survival, culture clash, and the rise of a new world?